Hey, now listen. These are 7 quick indicators that you surely need what we call financial salvation. Have you ever heard of something called the financial salvation? So someone can be possessed with demons. Some of people have actually some problems that need salvations, and those problems are actually financially related. And I'm going to share with you these quick 7 indicators. And by the way, guess what? Just be honest to yourself. You don't have even to comment it on the comment section, meaning like you don't have to tell us that you're suffering from the same problem. Just listen it out and get to see, do I possess any of those 2 indicators? And by the way, guess what? This is how you're going to test yourself. If you suffer from, let's say, this is how we're going to grade ourselves. If you have 2 problems out of what I'm going to share, you're doing a little bit okay, but you need to change on yourself. If you have 3 of them, you need to consider yourself very much in terms of the salvation. If you have anything to do 4 and above, at that particular at that particular level, you really need salvation, and you need to overly change yourself. And guess what? I'm not going to share just solution, or I'm not going to just share the quick indicators that you need a financial salvation. But at the end of this video, I'm going to share exactly now, what do you do? See, when I just tell you the problem without telling you how to solve it, there is no even essence of saying the problem. True or not true? Absolutely. Now, because I'm going to do justice on this video, I want you to do justice to me by going ahead and subscribing to this channel. There's a small button written subscribe down below there. Hit that magical button, and by the way, it just disappeared. Did it? Absolutely. And also like the video. Let's get in the business. Now, point number 1, there's something called the cyclical debts. I've ever been in a situation whereby you have something called the cyclical debt. Do you have a funny debt somewhere? Maybe let's say you borrowed some 30,000 somewhere, or 50, or whichever the amount of, or even 10, and then that debt is actually not getting away from you. And how is it happening? Like immediately you get immediately you get money or salary at the end of the month or week or day or whichever the time. First of all, you think about repaying that debt, because if you do not, then you do not qualify it. And then if you do not qualify it, then some of your things won't be paid. I mean, do you have that debt that really, in Swahili we say sumbua you a lot, like it really disturbs you a lot? Meaning like that debt, you see, let's say you get 100,000 as a salary, and then you have a funny debt somewhere of 40,000. It's really annoying. So, and this debt is usually matures every month. So immediately after getting the money, you need to want to get that money from the employment or from the salary. You clear this debt fast, and then it means now your purchasing power goes back to the 60,000. Now the only thing that you can be able to do is to borrow again from that institution that you borrowed, for you to bring back the purchasing power, for you to be able to survive the normal given month. Or otherwise, if you don't do that, the money that you have would actually manage to make the next money. You get what I'm saying? Now, if you get yourself in such kind of a scenario, and the debt that you're getting, that is we call a cyclical debt. And that debt, I'm telling you, you really need to have. Yes, you can be able, this is how you get the solution out of this. You can decide to, hey, guess what? Once you get the money, clear the debt, get off it and forget about it. Yeah, I know you can be able to borrow it, but assume as if you cannot be able to borrow it. Or maybe that will bring you down, maybe to not be able to function properly as far as the recurrent expenditures are concerned. Maybe you can decide, hey, guess what? Instead of borrowing 40, let me borrow 30. Next month, let me borrow 20. Let me borrow 10. What? In a period of 4 months, you've cleared that debt, you off the hook. And if you want to get that debt again, channel that debt towards doing something called an investment, not just something that is actually a consumable. Because when you get that debt, wow, it's a bit bad. Now, number 2, you have this debt called, or you have this problem of what we call the late bill payment. Late bills payment. All right, see, let me tell you one secret. The moment you realize you're, behind in paying your bills and such kind of things, this is really a very bad thing. And at that particular point, it tells you either you're living above your means, or number 2, or option 2, you actually do not know how to plan or manage your cash. Have you ever seen somebody whom you have ever been employed with? You work the same place, and then sometimes you ask yourself, does this guy get money that I usually get? For example, let's say you are a teacher. I'm going to use a teacher because I've ever been a teacher myself somewhere. And you get somebody who is actually, you're earning the same amount of money. Let's say all of you earn 40. But if you look at the lifestyle of this kind of individual, you ask yourself, oh my goodness, do we all earn 40? Sometimes you get sort of attempted to be like, bro, sister, how much do you earn per month? And then when they tell you, if they're open to tell you how much they earn, especially maybe say if you're working from the same institution, you kind of wonder, wow, and I'm struggling. And then you tend to ask them, so, okay, how many kids do you have? Perhaps maybe you think it's your kids who are eating your money. Or how many, do you have some responsibilities back at home, like the, black tax, people calling you back at home or something of sort? Like, you tend to actually get to understand, how does this individual live? Because they are neat, they are okay, they seem their mind is fresh and all those kind of things. Then you tend to think that these guys are earning more than I do. No, the reality is having the plan. No matter how much you earn, if you are disorganized, you ain't gonna. For example, I always tell people, even when you're working, if you do not have a plan for work, you're gonna be very tired by the time you're clearing that job, because you do not have a strategy. You do not have a way of actually having to handle that job. So the point is this: also when it comes to finances, if you do not have a budget and a plan, that 100,000, 200,000, even if you were to double or triple, you're still gonna face the same problem. And what you're supposed to do, we usually classify things in terms of the priorities. If the rent is actually going to the needs, the food, the shelter, the school fees, maybe you have a debt somewhere that you're paying, make sure that you actually monitor all those kind of things, and immediately you get money, fill all those loopholes. By the time now the money is becoming exhausted, by the time now your purchasing power goes down, all the, we call them the major bills you have already paid. And I said one thing, don't ever forget, the savings and investment should be a bill in your life. You see, the way you usually pay your rent, also have the investment as a bill you have to pay for that bill. That's a thing that you're supposed to do it, okay? Now, let's go to the point number 3. The point number 3 is none other than borrowing against your future money. That is, you're borrowing against your future money. Borrowing against your future money. You see, guess what? You're seated somewhere and you're like, guess what? In 3 months' time, I'm going to have this amount of money. Maybe you can anticipate a windfall. A windfall in this regard with finances, it means like you getting a huge chunk of money somewhere. Either you anticipate or maybe it just happens out of nowhere. All right? So the point is this: you borrow against that money. You have already consumed your future you. And you're relying on the point of, hey, it will happen. Guess what? Everything will remain constant. Because when you borrow, you have to really put a lot of things into constant. I'll still be working. If you borrow against your salary, it means I'll still be working, I'll be healthy, I'll still retain the job, and all those kind of things. So what if something happens in between? Either you lose the job, it means that what you had fronted as a collateral, actually you're gonna miss that specific thing. So you actually lost 2 things. You've lost that what you had as a security of your loan, and again you've lost that job for you. So the point is this: when you borrow against your future, when you realize for you to survive today, you always borrow your future. You always borrow your future. For example, maybe let's say in 6 months time from today, you're gonna have like 600k, and that money could have actually helped you. Either you have a dream of building your own home. Yeah, I mean, you may not be able to come up with a big structure, but at least you're gonna do something with the money. Or maybe you're looking forward into starting a business somewhere. And then what happens, because of today's character and behavior and the lifestyle that you're living in, you borrow against that future of yours. It's like you're stealing your future. All right, you steal your future, you consume it today. So by the time now the future dawns, now you reach the future, even if it's 6 months or 10 years, the reality comes in. Guess what? You have nothing to eat because you have already eaten your future. So if you realize that you are operating on that kind of a basis, you do not have a way that you can solve your current issues, you do not have a way that you can solve your current problems, you have to borrow your future money for you to survive on these current issues, then you have a very, very big problem, and you need to readjust yourself. There is nothing wrong with you getting that money, borrowing that money to invest, so that at least by the time now that time comes in, the money kicks in, so you already have the business, you already have the experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you getting the money to feed what we call the consumables, that's a very, very wrong thing. So you're borrowing the future money to fund the consumables. That is the problem. But if you borrow the future money on the basis of investment, there is nothing wrong with that. And I've seen a lot of people doing that. Someone actually borrows to buy a car that is really not a necessity to your life, but you want to do so because your friends have the car, or the estate or the suburb that you live, everyone ought to have a car or have a car. Or maybe you've taken your kid to a school whereby it's a necessity for a parent when they're doing the visiting, they must have a car. I saw a school like that where every parent that they're visiting their child, they must show up with a car. So if you get yourself into a situation whereby you cannot be able to stretch, or you cannot be able to handle that expenses, I always tell people, yes, I understand in this world we are on a competition. What you do, just stay sideline a little bit, work on yourself, improve on your finances, invest as well as you can, and then get back on the track. There is nothing wrong with having cars, with having that great investments and what have you, but do so with what we call a consistency. Do so with what we call having the rightful procedures. Otherwise, you're gonna have a very tough time. All right, let's go to the point number 5, or rather number 4. The point number 4, it calls about constant borrowing from family members. Have you ever been in a situation whereby you are stinging borrowing from your family members, and you're actually borrowing and you're not paying without not repaying back that loan? And then at this particular point, it reaches to a point whereby every family member is actually disgusted about you. Every time you call them, before even they say hi, they tell you, I don't have. And you ask them, no, I wasn't even borrowing, I was actually saying hi. Because to them, they actually understand you as a borrowing individual who shows up each and every time to borrow and such kind of a thing. So the point should be, when you actually get yourself in this situation whereby you're borrowing constantly from your family members, you tell them, I promised you, this is my last time and I'm gonna pay this back money. Please help me. I'm actually gonna go hungry today. My kids, I don't know what school fees. I'm gonna do this, blah, 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 blah. Then you get the money. Once you get the money, you solve the today's problem, you forgot about it. Sometimes you even become rude. And I don't know why, when it comes to Kenyans, I don't know whether you experience this problem from your country. The moment you lend money to somebody and it comes to time to ask for your money, they become angry. You actually feel like, oh my goodness, are they doing me a favor by paying back my money or something of sort? And then after that, after some times, they face the similar problem. They come back to you. They ask you, I'm so sorry. I apologize. I can do this, but lend me another one. You get that? So if you realize you have that character, because you know yourself very well, and if you do not know yourself very well, then ask them who you are. See, there is something called the Johari's window. There are people who can tell you who you are in terms of the character and behavior. Let them tell you who you are. And when they tell you something that you don't want to hear, come on, don't have the rage. It's good to listen to them because they know you better than you do. There's some of the part of you that you do not know yourself, like your voice and all those kind of things, your behavior and character. You know what? Let's go to the point number 5. The point number 5 is none other than having what we call arrears in some recurrent expenditures. Have you ever met somebody who has something called the arrears in the recurrent expenditures, like rent, and school fees? And let me tell you one secret, guys. Let me tell you one secret. The moment you realize you have a problem with paying the rent, the moment you pay the rent with what do we call it? You pay the rent with you're so bitter, you feel like, the guy does not deserve, you pay with that. No, come on. The moment you develop that kind of a negative attitude towards you paying those kind of things, you can't even attract blessings. The point remains, if there's something that you should really, 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 really take care of, is issues to do with rent. You really need to take care of the rent and also the school fees, because these are things, and also electricity, because everyone can tell, this guy does not have electricity. That's why he's in darkness. You can't tell people that now I'm doing something, I'm fasting, I'm doing, oh, come on, they can't tell you, no, you don't pay your rent, because they can switch to padlocks in your house or something also. See, in Kenya, when you don't pay your rent, the landlord actually adds another padlock there. So when you show up from job or work, you actually realize you have 2 padlocks. So you can only open yours. The other one is actually, you get what I'm saying? So it is good when you realize you're actually getting behind the arrears. Ask yourself, is it because I'm earning less money, or is it because I'm actually paying more than what I can actually afford? For example, if you show up to a house that you're paying 30,000 and you can barely pay that amount of money, because you are doing so, want to show people that you're living better. You can find yourself in a situation whereby you are not able to pay the rent because you're actually doing so. So sometimes it's always good to ask yourself, say, I'm getting this rent that I'm paying this amount of money. What if something happens? Can I actually be able to, actually be able to pay this rent if something happens? So it's good to make sure that you put on bills that you can be able to foot them just in case things happens. Number 3 or number 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, number 6, you do not have what we call emergency fund. Emergency fund, that is money that you set aside just in case something happens. The question is this: can you be able to pay? See, we say you're supposed to have an emergency fund of at least 3 months, 3 to 6 months. Okay, emergency fund, what does it mean? Let's say in a typical month you survive on 30,000. You can eat, drink, pay school fees, pay all those things, you need 30,000. So if you can be able to set aside like the 90,000, it means that if you are get fired today, the next 90 days, you're already good in shape. And why do we say that? Because if you have 90 days window to actually be stable, you can be able to look for another job. You can be able to think of, hey, can I be able to go and withdraw my savings and start a business? I mean, you can be able to think out, and maybe you can do some job applications and what have you as your families eat and all those kind of things. But I understand you might be down there, you're struggling with with barely eating and something of sort. Emergency fund may not be able to work if you're in that kind of a situation. So the point is this: try to do some of savings and invest, and try to think on how you can be able to grow yourself. When you're struggling down below, the emergency fund may not be the language that you can ever understand. If you're barely getting food to eat and such, think about how you can be able to grow yourself. Okay, now the last one but not the least, you're borrowing to pay loans. Borrowing to pay loans. You borrow Peter to pay John. And this is kind of, if you survive on the government's way, you get it wrong. And I'm not here to bash anybody, but the point is this: you see, government survive on. See, I've never seen a government, they actually budget for what they do not have. It's like you live in a house whereby you survive on, your budget says that you're supposed to survive on 60,000, but you can afford 40. So what do you do with 20? So you borrow the 20 for you to survive. So if you survive like a government, my friend, you have a problem. So you don't borrow to pay other loans. So what you do, try to pay the other loans with the money that you have. You're not the government. You never know. Government can discover a resource one day and then they pay everything that they owe everybody. You do not have. Even if you were to discover resources in your land, the moment there is a resources discovered, there is no longer yours, it's the government. So it is good to make sure that you understand all these nitty-gritties, or otherwise you might actually struggle out there and trying to understand what the heck is going on. So anyway, no more, guys. That is it. That is the end of my video. I've tried to show you not only the problems or the indicators that show that you really need financial salvation, but I've also tried to go ahead and share with you some of the things that you need to do so that you can get yourself off that hook. For now, it's a goodbye, but never forget, my number is always in the description of this specific video. Shoot me a call, let's talk business, and that is exactly how we grow each other. For now, it's a goodbye. See ya.